Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth.org Talks and Conversation with Chris Wettling. My name is Olivia Lai. I'm the managing editor at Earth.org. I'll be your host for tonight's event, which is brought to you by the Hive Co-working Spaces, a place where passionate and entrepreneurial people can get together and share ideas while growing their businesses. The Hive has location in Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, Australia, Singapore, and Taiwan. So tonight we are talking about food waste and why it has become one of the biggest environmental problems to emerge in recent years. And we want to talk about the ways we can help combat this issue. So this is why we invited our speaker today. Chris is the co-founder and head of business development of Chomp, which is an app designed to address food surplus in Hong Kong, which is by connecting customers to F&B businesses who have food in need of rescuing. So before we start, I want to remind our audience there'll be a Q&A session after this interview. So make sure to pop your questions into the chat box here on Zoom, and we will be sure to field them to Chris. So Chris, thank you again for joining us today. How's the start of your year been?
Definitely busy. It's crazy start of the year. I'm sure that's the same for everyone else, given the COVID restrictions and everything going on, but it's definitely still been busy. Busy is a good sign. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this year for sure.
That's really exciting to hear. So as I mentioned, today's main subject is all about food waste. So how aware or familiar are you with kind of the food waste issue before kind of starting your app? What has been your relationship with food in general?
Okay, well, good question. I mean, before we started doing Chomp, I'd say my knowledge of food waste was definitely a bit more limited than it is now. I think I've always known that food waste was kind of this big issue that kind of happens around us everywhere at every time. And I mean, you look at Hong Kong, for example. Hong Kong has one of the highest number of restaurants per capita in the world. There's food literally on every corner. So it's definitely an issue I've always known was there. It was one that we don't really talk about or address enough as well. And I've also always kind of thought it was an out of sight, out of mind problem. That's definitely changed now. But, you know, of course, before we started doing Chomp, it's kind of hard to think as an individual, you know, what can I do to actually solve that problem, or how can I contribute to, you know, limiting food waste or fighting food waste as an individual. So very broad, I would say. Things obviously a lot more in depth, the knowledge now, but yeah, that's kind of where it all started.
But have you always been the food lover, or just kind of, it's just part of the culture that you live in?
Definitely a food lover for sure. I grew up in a family of, my dad's a chef. Everyone kind of works in hotels, big foodie family. So as a kid, I actually spent a lot of time after school, always visiting my dad in his restaurant as well. So from an early age, I've always kind of known how much food gets thrown away, but you know, like a single restaurant. And then again, like I said earlier, if you think about how many restaurants are in Hong Kong, it's huge. So yeah, I've always been around food. Food's definitely a huge part of my life. I think I always wanted to do something food related at some point in my life. So I guess that stage is now with Chomp as well going forward.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of people, well, most people will be aware that, you know, food waste is bad, but not necessarily kind of the larger impacts around it. So what are some of the biggest environmental or even social impacts actually food has on us or and around the world?
I guess to start with, and firstly, I do apologize. My internet connection is a bit spotty. Do let me know. But I guess if we start with environmental impacts, I think the most common one that I think is talked about is the fact that food waste, I guess, disposed of in landfills produces methane over time, which is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2, for example. But it's also important to note that kind of food waste that happens at the later end of the supply chain, so kind of at the end user, the individual, the customer, the restaurant, etc. When food gets wasted at that level, there's a lot more environmental implications or considerations as well. And I'm sure we've heard these examples all before, but you know, throwing away a kilo of beef is the equivalent of throwing away 50,000 liters of water. And the same goes for, you know, a glass of milk. That's the same as throwing out, you know, 1,000 liters of water. So when we throw away food later at the supply, at the later stages of the supply chain, that's where you really start to see these environmental impacts and what is actually the result of throwing away, you know, maybe something that's this small. So, you know, and I mentioned water waste, for example, you know, the other kind of areas of impacts it has is, you know, the impacts on land, for example, you know, the land that is not only used to produce the food that we're throwing away, but then the land that's needed to build landfills to actually discard you know, that perfectly edible food or those bits of food waste. And then, of course, I guess fuel waste, you can also think about that, meaning, you know, you do need to transport your food waste somewhere. And oftentimes that's being transported to a landfill. That transportation, that whole process is as well, that's expelling energy as well. So there are a lot of kind of knock-on effects, you know, from throwing away food, but we don't really realize that until we actually get to that moment where we have that thing in our hand and we're about to throw it away. And it definitely is not common knowledge, or every day we're going to think about, oh, okay, how much water am I throwing away with this? It's hard. It's not your everyday, but you know, it definitely has a lot more environmental impacts than most people think.
For sure. That's really important to kind of highlight these things when we don't think about it every day, you know. Since we're based in Hong Kong here right now, we're talking here in the city. What do you know of the food waste situation here in the city? Like, has it been improved over the years, or is this kind of relatively okay when compared to other Asia cities, for example?
Well, I think food waste in kind of big cities like Hong Kong definitely is a problem. Again, like I said earlier, we don't really talk about it too much, or there isn't really enough kind of awareness drawn towards this issue. I think in a statistic in 2019 was about 3,300 tons of food waste gets thrown away every day. And I think that statistic still holds true to this day. And I think I read somewhere that's the equivalent of, I think, 250 double-decker buses that we throw away every day, which is kind of a bizarre thing to think about if you actually think we're throwing away 250 double-decker buses filled with, you know, food waste every day. That's kind of insane. And if you think about as well the reasons why people throw away food in Hong Kong, again, food in Hong Kong, like relatively, there is a low price of food. That is a reason why, you know, there is more food waste. You know, there are larger portions served as well. And I think in Hong Kong, when you go out to eat, you know, it's a matter of keeping face. You want to order more to show that obviously you have more of a full table. You can afford this. It's you know, it's definitely a bit more of a cultural thing as well. But there's a lot of reasons, of course, and you know, food waste, it's not something easy, like I said earlier, that people think about every day and go about their everyday lives as well. I know the Hong Kong government, they have their own plans. They have their own kind of food waste and yard waste plans that they lay out for a couple of years. But I'm speaking as, you know, from my own experience, I don't really see a lot of awareness or information about these kind of campaigns either. How do you get involved? How do I partake as well? So there definitely is, you know, more effort, or I guess more awareness or attention required for this topic. And yeah, that's, I guess that's kind of what I feel is going on in Hong Kong right now. I guess things are, I'd like to think, are gradually getting better, but if you look at kind of statistics, they've all kind of been the same the last couple of years. So.
So it was really start to like, let's kind of get going and change our habits. We kind of throwing a lot of phrases around. We talk about, you know, food waste and food surplus. And I kind of mentioned earlier in the introduction, your app kind of focus on food surplus. So can you kind of share us what exactly is the difference between food waste and food surplus?
Yeah. Well, food surplus and food waste, firstly, they're not the same thing. I like to think of food surplus as that stage before your food could become food waste. So, you know, for example, say a bakery today made 10 loaves of bread that they aim to sell before closing time. And at the end of the day, they've got 2 loaves of bread left over. You know, those 2 loaves of bread, they're still perfectly edible. Again, that's their surplus. That's what it means by surplus. And food waste is more kind of that conscious act of throwing away that food. So again, it's up to the bakery to decide what to do with that surplus. If they throw it away, that obviously constitutes as food waste. So there's that kind of difference as well. So we're in the business of saving the surplus. We're kind of coming in at that stage right before, you know, the end user, our partners or so think about throwing away their food, for example. We want to give that opportunity where, hey, you could sell your surplus and essentially generate revenue on what you would otherwise throw away from a partner's perspective. Yeah.
There's actually been other organizations, or rather charities in Hong Kong existing already that tackles food surplus. What do you feel you can offer differently, or why tackle this food surplus angle a different way?
Well, I think, food, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Food waste is such a complex global issue. It happens along every step of the supply chain. There's thousands and thousands of restaurants and F&B businesses here that, it's almost like a solution like this is long overdue for a city like Hong Kong, and a city like Hong Kong could definitely benefit from solutions that are easy to adopt into our lives and make sustainable living a bit easier as well. Our app has been designed to be as easy to use as possible, even for people who don't really care about sustainability, or they're not really interested in that topic. It's still it's an app where you can get deals and discounts. It's an app where you have access to foods that you otherwise might not have access to on a regular basis as well. But it's also just trying to show that it's not that hard to live a little bit more sustainably. A lot of people, prior to us doing Chomp, we did a lot of research, market study as well, to see how would people respond to a solution like this. And a lot of people, a common response was, I want to live more sustainably, I just don't know how. So we built Chomp to be a how, essentially, and then to make it easy for both customers and partners as well. Our focus, of course, is definitely on the local demographic as well, and we are slowly expanding across those areas.
Yeah, well, since you kind of mention and
you cut out there for like a split second. I hope you got my answer there, but please tell me if you'd like me to repeat that.
No, I got everything. That was all good. Since we kind of started talking about Chomp, maybe we can just kind of dive deeper and kind of start talking about what inspired you to take the leap actually and create this app in the first place, aside from kind of your awareness and interests around the sustainability issue.
Yeah, I guess what it was always kind of an idea, the idea of Chomp and this kind of solution was always an idea that myself and my co-founder Carla had when we were both studying in Switzerland, and it was kind of always an idea. And then when we came back to Hong Kong, we spoke about it a few times, and then it was really only became a reality when COVID hit, because COVID was essentially changing everything we were doing, from the way we were going to work, consuming entertainment, socializing, you name it. And dine-in service halted like it is now, and we started to think, how is COVID really changing the F&B industry, for example? Obviously delivery was king, delivery kind of took over, but we were under the impressions that, okay, if, for example, dinner services are halted, that's a large audience or large customer base that our restaurant's probably missing out on. Are they making up for that from delivery alone? I don't know. I'm inclined to think probably not. So COVID kind of really pushed us to think, all right, let's start this. And when we did our market research, like I mentioned earlier, and the responses we got were really positive as well, and people were quite excited for something like this, or what it could be. Those were all kind of indicators for us to start.
Excellent. So can you take us through step by step how Chomp works, and what can people how can people use the app essentially?
Sure. So Chomp, we essentially have two apps. One is Chomp HK, which is our user app, and then Chomp Partner, which is the app for our partners and our vendors. So, say for example, one of our partners, they'll have, a bakery, let's say a bakery, for example, they might have mystery boxes to sell. And when they have their surplus kind of identified, they'll go on the Chomp Partner app, list their boxes for sale. There'll always be a short description that says, in this box, you may find a couple of pastries, maybe a sandwich and a muffin. Here's some allergen concerns, etc. And once they create their box, on the user app, on the user side, they get a notification that says, Bakery A, for example, has food in need of rescuing. The consumer, will then click on that. It'll open the app. I have their store profile in front of me. I see what boxes there are I can rescue. There's a designated pickup time as well. So if I'm the consumer, okay, maybe cool, this box is on my way home after work. I'll buy this and I'll stroll over there on my way back home. Or maybe I'll pick this up. That's my breakfast for tomorrow. I'll bring it into the office the next day. So it's a pickup service only, but users have the ability to kind of favorite their stores on the app, and every time there is food in need of rescuing, they'll get a notification and they stay updated like so.
Hmm. And how do people respond to the idea of a mystery box? Because obviously people like shopping for things that they want or that they know of. How do people like, oh, I don't know what I'm actually expecting or getting from these bakeries?
Honestly, I mean, since day one doing this, the response has been really positive. You know, we definitely have people every once in a while, you know, still asking like, oh, what can I find in a box? Can I choose what goes in a box? Or like when will they have boxes and stuff? And it's hard for us to answer those questions. And obviously Chomp is a new solution for Hong Kong. It's, you know, an app that allows you to combat food waste. It's rescuing food surplus, and definitely there is a lot of education required on our behalf as well. And what we're doing, trying to educate people as to what it means as to a mystery box. It's food surplus. It's still perfectly edible. You know, it's not like a half-eaten steak kind of thing or like a broken off piece of bread. You know, it's we've definitely had to make that distinction at the beginning when we started, but it's the response has been positive. We definitely have, you know, great customers and fans at this point already that, you know, every now and then will message us on Instagram and be like, oh, like, can you let me know when they have boxes? Or, hey, I live here. Like, is there anything coming out here soon? So it's those kind of messages that keeps it positive, keeps it exciting for us as well. But we definitely know there's still a ways to go with kind of promoting what we're doing, educating people about food waste, and trying to make it as easy to understand and simple to use as possible.
Sure. So what has been the kind of biggest hesitancy? You mentioned, you know, people are scared of half-eaten food, or is it the hygiene kind of thing? Or is it just a general taboo surrounding things kind of leftover food? And how do you kind of address and change that misconceptions?
It's definitely, like I mentioned earlier, it's the perceptions of, oh, okay, it's a mystery box, it's surplus leftover, what's left over, you know, it's definitely that way of thinking that we're trying to change. And we do see, you know, a lot of people do understand what we're doing. It's, you know, it's fine having to re-explain what we're doing. It's definitely new and it's change. It's something, no one likes change. Change takes a while to get accustomed to as well. But, you know, obviously the, you know, conversations like this, like me and you are having, you know, these are definitely beneficial, and it's nice to see these conversations happening more where we can actually talk about what we're doing and actually explain to people the process of how it works. What needs to happen, of course, is definitely more on the education side. And I keep mentioning this, but, you know, we're in talks and in touch with schools, for example. And I recently, a couple of months, did a talk at the Harbor School just to talk about food waste and the kind of the issues here in Hong Kong as well. So in order to kind of change those perceptions, I guess you need more involvement from just multiple stakeholders. You know, it's not just us that are going to come in here and be like, hey, we're Chomp, we're here, we're going to change your way you feel about food, and there you go, snap my fingers and it's done. You know, it's, you need involvement from other stakeholders. Our partners getting involved and advocating for us is a huge plus, is a huge thing. Getting the government involved as well, getting schools involved, you know, media opportunities for us is always we're always grateful for, because it allows us to kind of spread our message as well. So you kind of just need a lot more involvement, I'd say, from multiple kind of key players or stakeholders, no matter where you are. So again, it's we all have to start somewhere, and we all have to kind of make our own little steps towards getting there.
For sure. Have you found, I mean, we talked about the cultural aspect of it. Have you found it difficult to kind of get through the language barrier in Hong Kong as well, especially because a lot of Chinese local bakeries don't necessarily, you know, hear from us all the time? And how do you kind of contact and get in touch and educate them on this issue?
So we definitely we always pride ourselves on focusing on the local market as well. So obviously everything in our communications and our marketing is bilingual as well. Our app is in English and Chinese as well for both our partners and our users as well. We recently were featured in a video interview on AM 730, the local kind of media company and kind of online magazine. So we also have the capacity and Chinese speakers on our team as well. So we are able to kind of cover those grounds, of course. I wish I spoke more Chinese than I do. But of course, we make sure we have the team and the people kind of on hand to kind of service all partners. Yeah.
I am curious, why tackle bakeries first with this app? Why not say restaurants or even hotels or anything else? Like why, or supermarkets as well? Why tackle bakeries?
It's not just bakeries. I guess bakeries was always like a starting point. Right now on Chomp, we do have, you know, bakeries, restaurants, bars, grocery stores, you name it, and we're happy and open to work with partners of all sizes, so long as they can download our app and kind of create a store profile. You know, by all means, we're happy to work with them. The bakery side definitely was a start, and you know, is still a bit of a focus on our end, because it's definitely easier, I'd say, to work with bakeries than restaurants. And that doesn't mean we don't want to work with restaurants, meaning bakeries, you know, they have their items that are already maybe pre-packaged or, you know, on display, you know, and there's an abundance of it. You know, you've got your custard buns, your sausage buns, your egg tarts, and whatnot. So for a bakery to say, hey, in my mystery box, you can find, you know, pastries and buns, here's some allergen concerns. But even as something as broad as that, it's easy then for them to manage. Customers arrive, it's like, okay, well, I've got X remaining, I can kind of pick and choose. All right, here are 5 buns and pastries, that's your mystery box, okay, you can have those. Whereas a restaurant, everything is made to order as well, so it's hard to know as well what the surplus is. And you know, restaurants work up until closing, so you know, that's also trying to work out how to manage that process, how to manage the app. But it's not impossible. Again, we have restaurants on board, you know, like you can go in Chomp, and we have one of our latest partners in Wanchai that, you know, they're known for beer and fried chicken. So what can you find inside their mystery box? Exactly, beer and fried chicken. So there is a bit more variety, and we are growing that. We are expanding with our partners too.
Excellent. What has been the relationship of kind of growing the app with people? Do you usually kind of approach all the different F&B businesses, or do they start approaching you now? Like, how is that kind of the strategy going?
It's definitely, of course, we're quite aggressive with our kind of outreach and our BD as well. We are a small team, so we are quite flexible as well. But you know, any given day, we're making God knows how many phone calls or writing how many emails, obviously trying to spread our message and our reach as well. But we have started to see, after a couple of months, we do have some, you know, places reach out to us on Instagram going like, hey, this looks interesting, can I find out more and stuff. So it's exciting for us, especially when we saw that first kind of cafe reach out to us. We were kind of, you know, celebrating a little bit, and things are definitely picking up for us, which we're really excited for this year.
What are they usually their first response to when they say, "Oh, we want to take your leftover food"? Are they usually quite happy to, you know, have them take off their hands, or are they a bit hesitant in sharing their own food?
Sorry, you cut out there. Are you talking in context of the partners, right?
Yeah. Are they usually comfortable when you reach out to
Yeah.
them? You know, they're happy to have food taken off their hands, or are they a bit hesitant about it?
It's definitely a mix of both. I think COVID as well has put some has made people a bit hesitant as well sometimes, or you know, things have slowed down. Every once in a while, we go through waves with COVID as well. There's so much uncertainty as well that sometimes, you know, partners are more kind of, hey, let's revisit this later when things die down, because obviously they have a lot of stuff going on their end. But I think we do also see a large number of partners, people we reach out to, actually, you know, from a sustainability angle, they understand what we're trying to do, and they're like, oh, okay, you know, not only can I, you know, save my food and, you know, maybe generate additional revenue, but, you know, using Chomp as an additional marketing platform, you know, we promote all our partners, and that's kind of also what we want to do. We want to promote kind of the F&B offerings in Hong Kong. I think a lot of times we forget how many, you know, amazing places there are here in Hong Kong, kind of around the corner in our neighborhoods and stuff. So that's also indirectly what we're trying to do. But it's definitely a mixed response. But I would say it's more, people are definitely seeing the benefits and see what we're doing, and you know, them giving us a shot, us being able to work with them. It's always an opportunity and something that we're really appreciative of.
Mm-hmm. So obviously the education needs to be towards both the consumers and for the stakeholders and creators of the producers of food as well. I am curious. We usually ask this question to, you know, startups people. What is your elevator pitch for Chomp?
Ooh, My elevator pitch. Ooh. Well, it usually starts with saying, hi, my name is Chris. I'm a co-founder of Chomp. We're a new food saving app that launched about 6 months ago in Hong Kong. And what we do is connect customers to F&B businesses who have food in need of rescuing, perfectly edible foods that have either gone unsold during the day or have a short shelf life. We give our partners an opportunity to package that together in a mystery box and give customers the opportunity to purchase, rescue, and pick that box up directly at their store. It's kind of how I started. I think the words are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I kind of go on from there. But
that's great.
it's taken me a while to kind of nail that down. Definitely spoke to myself a few times in the mirror. But yeah, that's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so Chomp has been around for a couple months, 6 months, I believe. What has been some successes you've seen so far, or at least some positive trends that you're really excited to see?
One thing we're definitely most proud of, I'd say, is we were selected into the Impact Commons startup, an accelerator program that is run by New World Development. So we were one of 12 startups included in their third round of accelerator program. And we were one of 12 out of more than 200 applicants, which was quite amazing for us to be a part of after a couple of months as well. We've been around for almost close to 6 months. And in that time, we've rescued slightly over 600 mystery boxes. So mystery boxes meaning meals, baked cakes, baked goodies, bakery items, chung fun, noodles, you name it. So for us, that's awesome. After about half a year, 600 meals and boxes saved, we're quite happy about that. And, we have a few special projects going on right now. We're in talks with some schools, some businesses as well. Obviously, people are stuck at home right now and working from home. So we're trying to find a solution that helps kind of service those customers that are not really out and about in town. But as well, what we're seeing positive, again, what I mentioned earlier, is just when we see customers, partners, potential partners reach out to us on Instagram or shoot us a message or give us a shout out or so, it definitely means a lot. And we're starting to see a lot more of that. And it's great, just trying to help spread our message across Hong Kong.
Yeah. So how many partners do you have so far with the app or F&B businesses?
I think after today, I think we've just hit 60. We had an internal call later. I think we just signed another 1 or 2 today. So I think we're at 60 right now, which is a lot for us. And we're quite fortunate to have that. But we definitely expect to go well over 60 in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So you mentioned a newer development earlier. Are there kind of like big companies or ideal people that you really want to partner with eventually and to help take Chomp to like the next level impact? Or if you can choose anyone, who would you choose?
So I got the first part of that question, but could you repeat the second part of that question?
Yeah, if there's anyone you can choose to pick to partner with to help you take Chomp the next level, who would you pick?
That's definitely a tough question. I'd say being able to partner with New World Development firstly is amazing, is an amazing opportunity for us. And exactly like you said, we're working with them to help scale our solution and grow our business, but also within their own ecosystem as well, within the New World Development ecosystem. So across their properties, which obviously include shopping malls, hotels, how can Chomp fit into service, shopping malls, for example. And that's actually the special project that we're working on right now with them. So honestly, a real estate kind of conglomerate or a big company like New World Development is ideal for us. Obviously, if we can find a solution to scale within shopping malls to see how we can service that area, that would be great for us, because then we kind of have your individual B2C, kind of your restaurant to consumer kind of direct, or maybe I could go to a shopping mall and rescue goodies from multiple vendors. So that's something that we're workshopping right now. And we hopefully or hope to have pilot that in the next couple of weeks or next month.
Really exciting. So kind of, can you give us any sneak preview or what's kind of come up next soon, or hopefully what's down the pipeline for Chomp?
I mean, I briefly spoke about the New World development opportunity. I think that's one of the most exciting ones. There definitely are a few more special projects in the pipeline that I can't really say too much of. We're quite excited. All I can say is obviously people are at home, people are working at home. So a lot of thoughts going around how to, service the people at home and, be able to just make that access to the surplus mystery boxes more wider, I guess.
As you mentioned, people are a lot more working from home and staying in. What are some kind of advice you would give to ways we can reduce kind of our food waste habits or potentially practices moving forward, especially, we're starting reliance on food deliveries, especially during the COVID times. What are some advice or some tips you would say to reduce it?
I think, the easiest thing to say is just to be a bit more, and as broad as it sounds, be a bit more conscious about, I guess if you're at home and ordering food, for example, how much are you ordering? And, do we have a tendency to over order sometimes? I think, yes, I definitely am an example of that. When it says order 100 more to get free delivery or something like this, I'm definitely one to, I buy into that, for example.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of like household tips, tricks, like little hacks you can do with like your food scraps and your food remains as well, or foods that are going old. And that's definitely something as well that we try to promote or talk about on our platform as well. Every Tuesday we have our what we call Tuesday tips, where we'll make a post about, hey, this is what you can do with like leftover rice, or you've got some fruit that's about to go bad lying at home, or it was after Chinese New Year. Great. I mean, we all have mandarins and tangerines at home. Like, what can you do with those? And so it's definitely, you have to get a bit creative. Composting is not really a thing in Hong Kong or widely practiced or known how to go about doing it. So again, it's really about having to do your own, I guess, homework or kind of due diligence for now, which, is hard to, it's not easy to, I don't think the average person is going to chop up an onion and then go, oh, I know what to do with this peel or this onion peel. Like it's definitely not common, but, there are ways to go about being more sustainable. You just kind of have to kind of look into them as well. Yeah.
Well, speaking of delivery services, what would you say, do you think that contributed to increasing the food waste situation in Hong Kong? Or would you actually want to work with them and potentially create a service that you can pick up whatever leftover delivery food and kind of redirect it to somewhere else? Is that potentially something we can do?
We've, the thoughts definitely crossed our mind, kind of linking up with a bigger delivery company as well, and we've had those discussions. Some of them still ongoing, but the presence of delivery companies, I say you can look at it both ways. I mean, one, the fact that there is delivery apps or delivery services is an opportunity for a restaurant, for example, to actually sell more. There's a wider audience. It's not just on site at the restaurant, so it gives them, if you look at it this way, an opportunity to move their inventory, move their stock, move their produce. So ideally, they might have less to throw away at the end of the day. But again, I guess looking at another way, delivery as well. What I mentioned earlier is, do we over order, for example? Like, do we actually, instead of there being more food waste produced at the restaurant level or retail, is that being shifted to the consumer? Are we the consumers, like the example I mentioned earlier, spend X amount more to get free delivery or X amount to get a free this or that? Are we, over ordering and getting into habits where, it's so convenient now, I could literally just pick up my phone, I press 3-4 buttons and done. Ooh, do I want this extra thing? Maybe it's so easy, I'm clicking around on my phone. I definitely think you can look at it both ways. But it's hard to know if we are over ordering now or not with delivery.
Yeah. Do you reckon we actually change how we kind of perceive food or how we treat food because of COVID? Are we actually collectively creating more food waste, for example? Or, recently there's been a lot more lockdowns or supply chain shortages. We actually value our food more. Where kind of the camp do you sit with?
I definitely think because of COVID and COVID itself, obviously having dine-in restrictions and, lockdowns and whatnot has definitely created more food waste. Again, there's less dining customers or less people going to restaurants, bakeries, etc. But I think COVID's definitely allowed us to start valuing our food a bit more. Like you said, there's food shortages or transportation issues and food not being able to get into Hong Kong or get into certain places or so we are definitely a bit more aware of like the food scene here in Hong Kong. And I definitely think we are starting to value that a bit more. We're starting to at least have that discussion, and like I said earlier, me and you were having this talk right now. These are the things that need to happen where we can start having that discussion to feel like we do value our food more and to actually make that a reality, right? So that kind of dialogue and discourse needs to happen in order for us to everyone go, okay, maybe there's something that we can do about it. Okay, this is actually an issue that is worth thinking, is worth talking about. So I would definitely say the mindset has shifted towards us valuing our food more. I mean, not just Chomp being, an initiative that's come out of COVID to try and combat that. You have other great organizations and initiatives in Hong Kong that are kind of playing their own part and doing their own thing. And one of them is our buddies at Zero Foodprint Asia. They're a non-for-profit agency that partner with restaurants and kind of local farmers as well to promote local sourcing, local produce as well. And in their area, that's also combating food waste, right? If you can get people to source locally, you kind of promote local production. The organization, they've had farmers markets before, and beautiful produce you see that actually grows in Hong Kong, like is on display, is there to buy. So we definitely are leaning more towards valuing our food and at least having that discussion that will allow us to value our food more in the future.
For sure. So based on your experience so far, what is the one food that gets wasted or made in surplus the most in Hong Kong, would you say?
That's definitely a hard question. I'd say anything, any of your kind of bakery items, bakery goods, your local bakeries that, again, like I mentioned earlier, you can go in and find your sausage bun, your custard bun, your char siu bao, and all this stuff. Like those are definitely the kind of partners that we're seeing where the surplus is definitely in a bit more abundance than other places. Again, a lot of those places, they make huge orders and huge amounts in the morning, fresh every day, and then those end up on display until closing time. So we definitely see a lot of surplus coming from those kind of partners.
Mm-hmm. So aside from kind of picking up kind of excess food, have you had conversation with them, like finding out the reasons behind them creating this much amount of food, or how in ways they can reduce their end as well?
It's always a tricky question and tricky conversation as well for us to have, because obviously, we want to position ourselves as a solution that they can use and not coming in here to say, hey, how are you guys running your business or your production, or maybe produce less. We're not experts in that area. All we can do is share kind of our findings or give them a solution that say, hey, we don't understand your production, and that's fine. We don't want to tell you what to do, but we're telling you that, hey, we noticed that there is a surplus and we'd love to give you an opportunity and a platform where you can save that surplus, essentially. I think again, I don't have too many answers specifically about why the production is the way it is with one of our partners, or why they throw away certain waste. They each have their own way of working as well, and like I said, we just want to come in to try to help as much as possible, I guess.
Absolutely. What you're doing is really great with the startup. So for example, for anyone who's looking to create their own startup, for example, or solution policies, for what kind of advice would you give? Obviously, it's not an easy road. There's a lot of tough conversations and way to do it.
Yeah. Well, what bit of advice? That's definitely a hard question, but as broad or as cliche as this might sound, it's as long as you believe in your idea, keep doing it. So that's starting your own thing in your own startup, I guess. You do run into moments where you feel like you've hit a wall, or the feelings of discouragement or kind of demotivation sometimes slip in or creep in. You just have to block that out. And again, like I said, as long as you believe in what you're doing, just keep doing it. You kind of owe it to yourself to see it through. So I'd say just keep your head down and keep working.
Mm-hmm. So one last question before I open up to the audience. Is there any ways you like to expand Chomp to look into further, not just like create made food, but raw produce, like so the process beforehand, as you mentioned in the supply chain, where the food loss happens. Is there any, at least any ideas you want to kind of expand into those areas?
Definitely. I mean, when we started Chomp, we've also always said that food was just the beginning. So the idea or intention is, there might be other areas or industries where a solution or a surplus saving solution could be applied to. Definitely thinking about the supply chain and how we could maybe service earlier stages of that. We are having those discussions. We've spoken to organizations, people who have links with the local farmers as well. So there's a lot of these discussions that we're having right now, and a lot of kind of, I guess, special projects, like I mentioned earlier, that are in the pipeline. So for us, again, it's an exciting year. There's a lot that we're hoping to get done and kind of bring out to the public as well.
Perfect. Great. So I'll start asking some questions for the audience. We have one here. What is your knowledge of OPOC 1 and what's your take on it? So OPOC 1.
Sorry,
So OPOC 1 is obviously the Hong Kong landfill kind of space. What's your take on it? How it contributes from, the connection with the environmental impact from food waste?
I'll be honest, I personally don't have much knowledge or information about that specific landfill, I'd say, but I think it's quite common in places like Hong Kong or so. And I think there was news about this fairly recently where, landfill space is filling up, and it's not just the case in Hong Kong, but globally as well. And, a result or impact of that is having to find alternative land space or other areas where you can build landfills. And then again, how far away is that from where the food needs to get transported? How big is that land? How much is that land? So I definitely know the landfills are being used up. And if we can play a role in trying to limit the amount of food that ends up in a landfill, we'll take that shot.
Great. We have another question here. What are some environmental considerations you have to consider when you're creating an app like Chomp? Is there a carbon footprint, or when it comes to transportation of food, is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, I'd like to think that, we keep our, as an organization or as a team, as Chomp, we keep our carbon footprint quite low. Firstly, we all kind of, work from home. We don't really have an office space. Again, the service and the app itself is a pickup service only, so we don't really rely heavily on transportation or so. I think in the process of building our app, we have an app team that sits in India, and this amazing team that builds our app. And again, that communication is done kind of online as well. So I guess in terms of our carbon footprint, and so it's, I'd like to think we keep it quite low and quite minimal as well. I hope that answers the question.
No problem. We have another question here asking, you mentioned earlier about rising cheap food costs in Hong Kong. That's why people sometimes might even, throw food out quite easily. Do you think kind of adding prices or rising costs of food could help solve the issue?
I don't know, and that's kind of hard to say. I think everyone will be a bit more pissed off if food prices increase. I think that's number one. And I don't honestly think I don't think that would change much. Honestly, I think food waste is a if you look at it this way, it's almost like a problem that has gotten to a point where it's okay if we throw away food. We feel like it's fine. If I have a carton of milk that I haven't used and it's gone spoiled, like I'm not gonna, it's like, oh, damn, I'm throwing this away. But we've almost made it okay or normalized it to throw away food. So I don't necessarily think a rise in price would change that. I think people would just be fixated too much on being angry that the prices are higher and not really, I don't think that would have much of an effect.
Mm-hmm. Another question here about, curious, what is your demographic of people using the app so far?
Right now, Majority, I'd say, are between your kind of ages like 20 to 35. We definitely see a lot more of the local demographic in our customer base as well. And obviously, we we want to reach anyone and everyone here in Hong Kong, but of course, the focus as well is on the younger generations as well, and that's where the kind of whole play with like education and stuff comes in. Us, partnering up with schools or kind of running programs and talks and stuff to kind of advocate this or push for this message. That's definitely something important, and that's something key as well.
Would you say you would rather target kind of the younger audiences rather than kind of targeting older people who already have established their own values and stuff like that?
I mean, I'm inclined to say yes, purely because I'm thinking of my dad right now. I love my dad, but I think I've explained the app to him maybe like 100 times, and it's definitely, I realize, no fault to his own as well. It definitely, I don't think it's necessarily an app that he would use on a regular basis. I think it's more definitely the younger generations who are probably more aware or involved with issues of sustainability and, how to live sustainably and more conscious about those things as well versus, I guess my dad's demographic, so to say.
Sure. So someone asked here, everybody is trying to become more sustainable nowadays. There are some players in the market that are greenwashing that effort. How can you ensure Chomp isn't doing that as well?
Well, I mean, firstly, if you download our app and you open our app, we're not really pushing green messages or sustainability messages in your face. It's not like, oh, hey, if you don't pick this up, you're wasting X amount of water, or hey, like if you don't get, it's again, it's an app that was designed with the intention. And when we designed it, I was really thinking about how I used to be, and how I used to be was just like, it's, I'm one person, it's food waste, out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't really bother me, right? So the app was designed to service and be used by people like that, how I used to be, it's easy, I can download it, it's deals, it's discounts, it's food related as well. And who doesn't love a good deal on that? So obviously we don't push any of these messages or this kind of hard greenwashing sell on our app. If you look at our communications as well, we have a lot of like tips, tricks, kind of what you can do at home, how to, be a bit more sustainable in your household as well. We do show facts, figures about sustainability, etc., but it's never in context or in a way where I'm trying to make you feel bad or guilty that you're not doing enough. It's, hey, it's a platform that's here to use if you want to use it. It's, if you don't want to use it, it's fine. It might not be for you, but we're trying to just change that mindset, I guess, a bit in Hong Kong, and on a more ambitious level, change the way people feel about food consumption. What we mean by that is really, I'm not trying to say, hey, don't use Deliveroo and Food Panda and only use Chomp. Of course not. I still use Deliveroo and Food Panda, but it's building that behavior where maybe I, the consumer, I want to order something tonight, but maybe before I order it, I'm going to open up Chomp and at least have that consideration or thought where I go, hey, you know what, I could order something tonight, or I could walk down the road because a block away from me, like this amazing place has like pastries and such, or, a rice box to rescue. Cool, I save a deal, I actually get to go check it out. Maybe I see that they sell other things there that I'm like, oh, dope, I'll come back here another day. So it's trying to build those behaviors and rather than greenwashing and making people feel bad about not combating food waste. So I hope that answers that question.
We have another question here. What are the biggest obstacles you had so far aside from getting partners?
Again, getting partners is one. The education part, and again, I've mentioned this a lot throughout the night, but obviously to kind of educate customers, consumers, trying to get that reach, trying to get your average, person walking down the road to have that consideration, trying to build that habit, trying to build that, at least concern or slight interest towards, what you can do about food waste. I'm constantly walking around town, and when I see people passing me by on their phones, I'm always constantly thinking, how do I get you to be looking at my app while, as you're passing by? How do I get these people to be on my app? It's everyday people. So it's really trying to educate people and trying to spread that message, is trying to let people really know that living sustainably doesn't have to be that hard, essentially.
We have someone asking about, you've launched this app. Have you thought about launching it in another country, or was first choice always Hong Kong?
First choice was definitely always Hong Kong. I think it was always kind of a dream. Obviously, coming from here and being from Hong Kong, I've always wanted to come back and do something here. Has always been a desire as well. We obviously have thought about where else to go and where to expand. You know, we've had those discussions, but for now, we're still young, we're still small. It's been 6 months. You know, we want to focus on Hong Kong, want to make sure that we get it right here before we start thinking about, you know, other areas and other countries, for example.
But would you imagine it could be easily replicated, this kind of business model in another Asian country? Or would you imagine it's quite specific to Hong Kong?
You definitely have similar solutions that exist. I think, you know, in Singapore, there is already a solution similar to ours. You know, you have more and more. I think in Indonesia, there's one like we looked into, there's a small one starting up in South Korea. There's definitely, and it's great to see. It's great to see that there's more kind of people and players in the area or in the kind of space that are at least advocating for this and at least trying to achieve some sort of change. So, you know, again, if and when that time comes for us to think about expanding outside of Hong Kong, of course, we would have to be mindful and respectful, of course, the other kind of players that there already are there. But again, it's just great to see that there is more being done towards combating food waste, I guess.
Absolutely. I am curious. So obviously the mystery boxes are from, you know, paper bags or cardboard boxes. Have you ever thought of actually introducing letting people bring their own takeaway boxes and just pick them up?
Definitely. And we have some partners, you know, that have asked us before as well, hey, is there a button where we can list you have to bring your own bag or so? But basically when they list their mystery boxes in the description box, they essentially can be as precise or as vague as they want. And we do have some partners that say, hey, please bring your own bag. If not, we will charge you $5 extra or something. You know, I think one or two of them do that. A few of them say, please bring your own bag as well. It's not something we've made a mandatory requirement right now, as obviously that in itself is harder to rely on how many people are walking around town with a lunchbox in their hand or an empty lunchbox where they can, you know, rescue food. But that is definitely obviously within the discussion or things that we want to try to achieve someday.
Absolutely. We have not a question, just like a shout out. They said they love your Tuesday tips and made a bunch of things with their lemon peel. So great. Thank you for that message.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Since
We'd love to hear that.
we're approaching the 1 hour mark, so I'm just gonna leave these kind of more final questions. This is something we actually asked all our speakers previously. It's more of a general, larger question, which is, you know, obviously COVID-19 has forced a lot of people to rethink, you know, their values and importance of the environment. Do you actually think has made things better, or, you know, actually people forgot things really quickly and moved on?
As in, are people more environmentally, I guess, aware or concerned about? I definitely think yes, and I definitely think I think we are more aware of kind of the impacts or what's going on with our environment. And again, what I mentioned earlier, in context of what we're doing, you know, you're definitely seeing a lot more groups, initiatives, like organizations trying to combat different areas of waste, whether that is, you know, food waste, water waste, etc., you name it. And again, highlighting people like our partners and our you know, our friends at Zero Foodprint Asia, what they're doing kind of at the beginning side of the supply chain, whereas we come in kind of the end of the supply chain. I definitely think we're moving more towards being aware of these issues, or at least starting to care more, or at least putting actions towards, because I definitely used to think that when people talked about sustainability in the past, it was just, you know, obviously you want to be seen talking about it because it makes it seem like you care, right? But I think that's changing in Hong Kong and just globally as well, where I think people are held more accountable to what they're saying and what they're doing as well. People are more aware as well of kind of the environmental impacts of organizations, etc. But I definitely say it's a positive trend. It is a positive progression, and I think people are definitely a bit more aware, or growing to be more aware because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. So one last question. How optimistic are you in helping solve the food waste issue, or at least in our generation? How optimistic do you think?
I am always optimistic. I sometimes can be overly optimistic, but Again, just someone gave us a shout out there a couple of seconds ago. It's moments like that, or it's people who message us or reach out to us and ask us to find out more, or want to work with us. That's kind of what makes things positive and exciting for me, makes me hopeful as well. And we're definitely seeing a rise in that. And we're going to stay optimistic despite what COVID throws at us or what restrictions throws at us. Again, we're a small team. We can pivot. We're flexible, and we're here to stay. So yeah, staying optimistic for sure.
Amazing. And on that lovely note, that brings an end to the evening. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us, and a really big special thank you to Chris for being our guest tonight. One last thing is, where can people follow you or potentially reach out to you if they're interested?
Reach out to us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is Chomp Food Waste. I myself and my other co-founder Carla, we're all on that. We're managing that. So if you shoot me a message right now, my phone's next to me, I'll see it. So yeah, get in touch with us over Instagram.
Excellent. And of course, everyone, please make sure to also follow Earth.org, obviously, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and our website for the latest updates on the environment and all the climate solutions from around the world. It was really great speaking to you, and absolutely a pleasure to have you on, Chris. Thank you, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks again. Bye, everyone. Bye.